I'm going them.
Hey, good morning.
Morning. Okay. Today we're gonna start on by the Mishnah on Lamed Chesam and Beis Yishkach Dr. Stein for giving the share yesterday. Okay, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. That's chus of our learning. We should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. Just like this. Hasheichet Lavid Kechavim. Someone shechs for a Navid Kechavim. Now it sounds like there's a yid that's shechting, and he's shechting for a guy. Then what's he shechting for a guy? The guy wants to eat it. So the guy isn't a sheichet, so he goes to a sheichet, to a Jew, and the sheichet in town, and the Jew shechs for the guy to be able to eat some meat. Shchitas ksheira, it's kosher. Sounds like b'di'evet. What should be the shaila? Anyway, Rebbe Lezer Paisel. Rebbe Lezer says no, it's actually pasul. Amar Rebbe Lezer. Rebbe Lezer says, even if he shechted it so the guy could eat one piece of the liver, chatzar kavod sounds like the diaphragm, something. It's pasul. The whole animal is pasul. Why? Because when you shechted for the guy, in other words, the guy is the owner of the animal, and you're just the sheichet, so the guy's machshava is affecting the animal, and he's thinking about avodah zarah, and he didn't say that, but by default, stam machshava avodah zarah, and so it's going to be considered zivchei mesim, shchita for avodah zarah, and we say that is asur ba'ana. Amar Rabbi Yosi, that's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. It's probably Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar is Rabbi Lazar ben Shemua, because Rabbi Yosi is going to argue. So Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Lazar are friends. Rabbi Lazar is a generation or two earlier. So Amar Rabbi Yosi says kal b'chaymer advarim. I'll tell you that it's a kal b'chaymer. Ma b'makam shemachshav b'peiselis b'mikdashim. Eina kol haylach ala achar ha'oved. When it comes to kudshim, where machshava really makes a difference. All of the psulim by karbanuses, pigol or lashman or chutzlam kaiman, all of these machshavas, which could invalidate a sacrifice. Whose machshava are we concerned about? Not the owner. We're concerned about the oved, the kayan, the one that's doing the service. Makam sheim machshava peiselas b'chulin in adin kol helach achar sheichet. When it comes to chulin, here's just a regular mundane animal. Now you're telling me that the owner's machshava is going to affect the validity of this regular animal. It's not even a sacrifice. The owner's machshava is going to make it if it's going to be for avodah zarah. Machshava, we don't even make a big deal about machshava by chulin. Okay. Hani tanoi islu de Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yosi. Now we know what Rabbi Yosi himself holds. However, what Rabbi Yosi himself holds, Rabbi Yosi himself holds that when it comes to kudshim, we don't look at the owner's thoughts. We only look at the ovid, only the kayan's thoughts. However, the Tanakama that said shchitas ksheira, in Rabbi Lezer that says paisel, are both going to follow the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yosi. It's interesting that Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yosi argues on Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yosi is his son. But they hold up for Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yosi. The Tanyas was studied in the Brisa. Amar Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yosi, Shamati Shabayla Mefaglim. Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yosi says that I heard that the owners can make pigel as well. Notice if the owners have thoughts that they're going to eat some of this animal, sprinkle some of this blood out of the allotted time that's allowed for this carbon, so they could make the carbon pigel, even though they're not the ones that are doing the avodah. So big chiddush of Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yosi. There's a famous question on this from Saita, that if the Saita, that means that the Saita herself could ruin her carbon. We bring a carbon, and all of this is all to a mincha she brings. But all of this is to verify if she's innocent and all of that. But she could mess up the whole thing, according to Rabbi Yossi, by having thoughts. That's a famous question on Rabbi Shitas Rabbi Yossi. Whatever the case is, Miyu Tanakama Sava, the first opinion that says that, in other words, both the Tanakama and Rabbi Lezer hold of Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yossi that the thoughts of the owner make a difference. They're effective just like the Ovid. The only thing is, so why did Tanakama say that it's kosher? Tanakama Sava Ishamin and the Chashavin. Eloi. Stam Machshava Savid is Chavan Lavid Chavan Layamrina. Says that if we heard that the guy had thoughts of Avodah Zarah, then you're right. The guy that's not the sheikhet, the guy is just an owner. If we know that he had thoughts of Avodah Zarah, then we would actually say that it's a problem. Rabbi Lezer Savar Afagav Delei Shamin and the Chashiv Stamachshav Savid Cham Lavid Cham Amrina said even if we don't know if he was thinking about Avodah Zarah, what was he thinking? He's thinking about Avodah Zarah. Because the stam, a default thought of a non-Jew is Avodah Zarah. The machlekes here is if we don't know what he was thinking. Do we say kosher? Do we say pasul? Do we say that? What do you mean you don't know what he's thinking? Of course, he's a guy. He's thinking about Avodah Zarah. Or do we say no? The goyim think about Avodah Zarah, but not every guy is thinking about Avodah Zarah. So Rabbi Yossi is the one that argues on this. Says Afagav the Shamin and the Chashiv. Even if we know what he was thinking, but Zem Chashiv is Zayivid Layamrinan. Rabbi Yossi says a direct argument on Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yossi held that the thoughts of the owner make the carbon piggle. And Rabbi Yossi says that the thoughts of the owner are leimayla v'leimayra. They don't make a difference. They don't affect anything. Okay. So far, the way we learned this Gemara, we learned the Mishnah. There's three opinions in the Mishnah. There's the Tanakama, there's Rabbi Lezer, and then there's Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi holds that the thoughts of the owner don't make a difference. Tanakama and Rabbi Lezer hold that the thoughts of the owner do make a difference. It's just the question is, what was he thinking? What can we imagine a default thought? Can we assume what his default thought would be? Okay, amazing Gemara so far. Ikad Amri, there are those that say the Shamin and the Chashiv pligi. Actually, they're actually arguing about when we know that what he was thinking. Tanakama Savar Kiamrin and Zemachashiv Zavid Hanin Mili Bifnim of a Bechutz Light. Tanakama agrees with Rabbi Yossi that the thoughts of the owner do make a difference. And we know in this case where he's thinking about Avodah Zarah, we know that he's thinking about Avodah Zarah, not a default. There's a Ikad Amri here. This is the second version of the Machlekes. So why did the Tanakama say, if you know what he was thinking about Avodah Zarah, and the thoughts of the owner make a difference? Why did Tanakama say Ksheira? The teretz is because Ki Amrina and Zemachashiv v'Ze'oivet Hanimili B'fnim Aval B'chutz Lai. When do we say we accept the opinion of Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yossi? That's only by a carbon which is brought inside the base of Migdash, that all the machshavas over there matter, even the owner's machshava, not just the oivet's machshava, not just the kayan's machshava, but even the owner's machshava matters. But here we're outside the base of Migdash, where thoughts don't matter so much. So then we're not going to count the thoughts of the owner, only the thoughts of the sheikhet. If the sheikhet shechted for Avodah, that's a different story. But the owner has in mind while the sheikhet shechting, that doesn't matter because it's not a carbon itself. So in other words, the Tanakhama, according to this opinion, also agrees with Rabbi Yossi. So why it's kosher is because it's not a carbon. Chutz mipnim lo yofinan. Says we don't learn an outside slaughtering from a sacrificial slaughtering. Where over there, sacrificial slaughtering, we would say that the thoughts of the owner do make a difference. Rabbi Eliezer, look, it has a yud over here. Rabbi Lezer, it's probably supposed to be Rabbi Lezer. Let me see in New Gemara if they switch it. No, they don't switch it in. See it a lot. I see it a lot in Mishnayos. that the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer comes into the later generations, and they just argue with him just like a contemporary. I wonder if anyone wrote about that, or if is it all a mistake and it's really supposed to be Rabbi Eliezer. Okay. Okay, sorry, let me explain Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer says, why is it possible? Why is it Asr Bana? Even though the one that was shechting was a Yid and he did it to perfect shechita, is the best shecher in town. The reason is because the owner that was standing there, actually we know, had thoughts of Avodah Zarah. And we learn Chutz Mifnim. And just like by a carbon, we would say that the owner is going to affect the validity of the carbon. The owner's thoughts will affect the validity of the carbon. So too, b'chutz, so too a regular sacrifice, a regular slaughtering, also the owner's thoughts were going to make a difference. So Rabbi Yossi argues on the whole concept. Says there's no such thing as the owner's thoughts having any effect on a sacrifice, even a sacrifice. Come and listen to a statement of Amiraim. If someone shechts an animal, Mamish has thoughts of Avodah Zarah. The only thing is, he doesn't have thoughts of the shchitas for Avodah Zarah. He says, I'm shechting this animal stam. But while he's shechting, he has thoughts that later on, he's going to take the blood and he's going to sprinkle it on the idol. Or he's going to take the fats and he's going to burn the fats in front of an idol. So, did he sprinkle the blood on the idol? We don't know. Probably not. Did he burn the fats on it? We don't know. We're not going there. We're starting right here just because he had those thoughts itself. Rabbi Yechon says that it's puzzle. Now, puzzle over here it's not a carbon. What does it mean, puzzle? It also means that it's asr bana. We consider it an idolatrous offering, which we learned from the pasuk that it's considered zivchei mesim, just like a corpse. You can't have benefit from the corpse. So too, you can't have benefit from this animal. That's Rabbi Yechon's opinion. He's strict about this. Someone has thoughts about another service. Reb Shimon ben Lakish Amar Muteris. Reb Shimon ben Lakish says no, it's mutter. Rabbi Yechon Amar Psula, the Gemara explains to Machlekes. Rabbi Yechon says the reason why we say it's asr bana is because that you can think about thoughts during one service. Not you can, but if you did think about thoughts during one service, for example, the shechita, about doing the zrika, that would invalidate a sacrifice, right? Not just by a sacrifice that would work. By pigel, well, a classical case of pigel is someone who's doing shechita, and while he's doing the shechita, he's thinking about sprinkling the blood tomorrow. It's a classic pigel, which means that the thoughts about the shechita are not about the shechita. It's the thoughts of the shechita are about the zrika, the sprinkling of the blood, and that's a classic case of pigel. So if that's the way it works by pigel, we're going to learn from that also to a slaughtering that's done outside the temple, and where someone thinks about doing something for an idol, a different part of the service, a different part of this animal process. So that's Rabbi Yechon's opinion. Rishlakish Amar Muteres, Vein Machash from Avodah L'Avodah, V'legamin Chutz Mipnim. Rishlakish says that there's no problem with this animal. We don't consider thoughts about another activity to affect the validity of the shechita. The shechita was perfectly fine. You're having thoughts about doing something else. That has nothing to do with the shechita. In the Beis Hamikdash, thoughts about the zrika are going to affect the shechita, right? You can think about something else and it will invalidate. He says, yeah, that's right. However, but we don't learn this to other things. This is only by a carbon where we would say that. Okay. The Gemara says that this is a lishitase. Lishitase means that they each follow their own opinion in another area, which plays out in this case as well. Ditmar, because we have another statement of Amiroim, shachta lishma lizikdama shlei lishma. Let's say someone shechs a chatas. Rule is that when you shech the chatas, you have to have in mind that this is a chatas. If you have in mind that this is a shlamim, so the carbon is puzzled. If it would be a shlamim that you shechted for a chatas, so we would say, or for an ayla, let's say, we would say, okay, the animal is a kosher carbon, but l'maisa you pledged the shlamim and you didn't bring a shlamim yet because the one that was supposed to be a shlamim was you turned it into an ayla or something else. But if it's a chatas has a unique halacha, chatas and Pesach, that if you change the type of sacrifice that it is, the whole thing is possible. So here, you did a shchita properly, that it's a chatas. It was a chatas. You did a shchita that it's a chatas. But while you're doing the shchita for it's a chatas, you have intention that I'm going to sprinkle the blood for a shlamim. So you have thoughts about the way you're going to intend the next service. So Rabbi Yochanan says regarding this, Rabbi Yochanan says it works like that. You can think about other services while you're doing this service, and it's going to be effective. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says no, it doesn't work like that. This sacrifice is kosher. Rabbi Yochanan says it's possible. Says how does pigel work? Exactly like this. I have thoughts by the shchita what I'm going to do by the zrika. So he says, if that's the way it works by pigel, then it works by other thoughts as well. A similar problem to pigel would be a chatas that's shalei lishma, where you have intention that the chatas should be for a shlamim. And what happens if you have intention while you're doing the shchita of the chatas for the zrika to be a shlamim? So he says that would be just like by the way it works by pigel, and so therefore it would be possible. Shimon says it's kosher. You can't have thoughts, hypothetical thoughts about how you're going to do another service here, and that's going to affect the carbon. You're thinking now about the shchita. You're thinking that it's a chatas, which is correct. You have in mind also in your head that when you do this rika, it's going to be a shlamim, but you're not doing this rika. By pigel. Works like that. You have intention about the zrika and that affects. It says, and we won't learn from machshavas pigel. We won't learn from pigel. Pigel has its unique halacha. Now we have two machlekes in between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Both of them have to do with mechashven me'aved l'aveda. Rabbi Yochanan says mechashven me'aved l'aveda, that you can, if your thoughts about doing something else is going, even though you're not doing that now, is going to affect the validity of this carbon, or just stam animal of chulin. It's going to affect the way you have thoughts of what else you're going to do with this. And Rish Lakish says that your thoughts about another service don't affect this. Where says it's shricha? Why do we have to need two machlekes in about the same concept? Basically, just merge them all together. Rabbi Yochanan says mechashrin me'aved l'aved, and Rish Lakish says ein mechashrin me'aved l'aved. Says tzricha diet marbaha. If we would only talk about the aved zara one, the one that where someone is just shechting a regular animal outside the base of Mikdash, and then he has thoughts. You know what? There's a church down the road. I'm going to take the blood and put it over there. So if we would talk about that, maybe over there Reish Lakish would say that it's going to be mutter, which he does say that it's mutter. Why is it mutter? Because you don't learn. I know by pigel you could have thoughts about another service, about the zrika, but this is not a carbon. This is different. This is just a regular animal. Your thoughts about it doing a zrika on a regular animal that's shechted in the shlachtas, that shouldn't affect anything. But maybe if we were talking about a chatas, and you had the thoughts that you're going to do this rika for a shlamim, maybe Rish Lakish would agree because that's a carbon. So therefore, Rish Lakish argues by the yes, we have to have it clearly that Rish Lakish argues by the Chatas. Okay. V'yitmar bahach, and if we would talk about just the Lishma by the case of the Chatas, the case of the Karban, so then we would say Behikam Rabbi Yechanan. Over there, Rabbi Yechanan would say that it's going to be puzzle because we're going to say that in the base of Mikdash, yeah, your thoughts about another service are going to matter. Aval Baha. But when it comes to Avodah Zarah, a Meidler Rish Lakish, we could have thought that maybe, because it's not in the base of Mikdash, could have thought that maybe he would agree to Rish Lakish, that Rish Lakish said, it doesn't matter if you think about something else. So therefore, we need the case of Avodah Zarah also to tell us that Rabbi Yochanan holds that even by a regular mundane animal, if someone has thoughts about doing some other thing over here after the Shechita, he's going to create something and do something for Avodah Zarah, that's going to invalidate the Shechita itself. Okay. Massive Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes has a question. Some Rabbi Yasi says Kal v'chemer advarim. It says that it's a Kal v'chemer. It's going to be a question on Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Kal v'chemer. Ma b'makom shem machshava peiselis b'mikdash nena kol helech halachar ha'ived makom shem machshava peiselis b'chol nein din shli kol helech halachar ha'sheichet. We learned in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yasi holds that by a karban, we don't even say that the thoughts of the owner are going to make any difference here. Now, when it's not a karban, for sure we're not going to say the thoughts of the owner are going to make a difference. That's Rabbi Yosef's opinion about a sheichet for a guy. Maybe he's thinking about it. He says there's absolutely no problem. Even in the base of Mikdash, that wouldn't be a problem what the guy's thoughts are, because it only follows the one that's actually doing the service. The Gemara says, "Ma'yin machshava piselas b'chulin." We're saying over here that if thoughts by a karban don't affect, so for sure they don't affect by chulin where thoughts don't matter. If we say that thoughts by chulin never make a difference, so then how does we have the halachas of shechting for Avodah Zarah if thoughts don't matter? Of course thoughts matter. If someone shechts for Avodah Zarah, it's going to make a difference. Ella pshita me'avodah la'avodah. Rather, he wasn't talking about thoughts by a shechita. It's talking about that if someone would have thoughts by a shechita about a zrika, that doesn't matter by chulin. It's a kasha on Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan said, this is a brisa. Rabbi Yechanan says that doing a shechita with thoughts of Avodah Zarah is going to make a difference. Even though it's even though it's me'aved la'aveda. You're not thinking about the shechita while you're doing the shechita. The shechita, you have the right intention. Thinking about doing some other service. When it comes to a karban, we do say that you go from one thought to another, from one activity to another activity in thought. In other words, you're doing the shechita and you think about the zrika would invalidate. But nevertheless, but you only follow the kayan's thoughts. You don't go after the owner's thoughts. When it comes to chulin, where you can't think about one service about another service. You cannot. It doesn't make a difference if you do. And so only for that avodah itself. Another shechita for avodah zarah, yes, it's possible. But not shechita, not during the shechita to think about a zrika, that wouldn't invalidate. So for sure we should only follow the one that's doing the service and not the owner. When it says right away, Pnim Kashler Shim Ben Lakish. Rish Lakish held that I know by Pigel, if you have thoughts during the shechita about a zrika, that's a classic case of pigel and the animal's puzzle, the carbon's puzzle. But let's say you have thoughts, not pigel thoughts. Pigel is out of a lot of time. Let's say you have thoughts of shalei lishma. You're doing a chatas, and you have thoughts that you're going to do another avaida for a shlamim. Rish Lakish says that that's kosher. The brisa that we just learned says, it didn't say this clearly, but based on the question that we had, we said that it's going to be possible. Because by a carbon, we do say mechash ma'aved l'aved. It's the kasha and Rish Lakish. Now, chutz kasha l'Rabbi Yochanan. Now, when it comes to a carbon, and not a carbon, when it comes to any animal that's being shechted for avodah zarah, we said that it's not going to matter if it's about a different service, about doing the zrika. It has to be about this itself, only about the shechita. The Gemara answers, because Rish Lakish is a student of Rabbi Yochanan, so it's easy to say that he had his opinion before he heard of this, because Rabbi Yochanan was a teacher of Rish Lakish, and a teacher. Would say that he heard that basically what this Gemara is saying is that Rish Lakish changed his mind. Bishlam Rish Lakish, we could say that he changed his mind because he didn't know everything at the beginning, and then his teacher taught him, so he changed his mind. That's an easy teretz. However, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan, what are you going to do about chutz? Where it says clearly that we don't attribute any significance to thoughts about another service while you're doing the service. That's what the brisa says, based on our discussion of the brisa. Rabbi Yochanan says that we do attribute thoughts to about another service. Okay, so now I think that means that Rish Lakish is the one that gives the answer. Rish Lakish, not Rish Lakish. Sorry, Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes asked the question. Rav Sheshes gives an answer. Ba'arba avodas. He's talking about there's 4 services that are done for a sacrifice. That's shchita, the slaughtering. Kabbalah is receiving the blood. Halacha is walking it to the altar, and then haktara is putting it on the fire. The innards on the fire. So it's like this. When it comes to a karban, we have 4 possibilities when a person could invalidate the sacrifice because of his thoughts, but nevertheless, we only follow the one that's doing the service. We're on top of Lamed Testament Beis. When it comes to chulin, there's only 2 possibilities. That's by the shechita. And then if you go ahead and do a zrika by a chulin animal, that would be a problem. Rashi asks, what if you take the fats and you burn it in front of an idol? That's called haktara. So that's not just the 2, that's not just the sprinkling of the blood, but it's also haktara. Rashi says it would be a problem if someone takes a fats and puts it in front of an idol, but it wouldn't invalidate the entire carbon. It wouldn't invalidate the entire animal. It would only be a problem of the fats. That's the top Rashi. Okay, so now what we're accomplishing now is that we're discussing that if you only have two possible times of invalidating thoughts, which is by a regular animal, so it says like this. If when it comes to a carbon where you have 4 possible times of having invalidating thoughts, and nevertheless we only say that those invalidating thoughts can come from the one that's doing the service, not the one that's doing not the owner. So when it comes to a regular mundane animal where you only have 2 possible times of having invalidating thoughts, so for sure it only comes from the one that's doing the shechita, and not the one that's not the owner that's standing on the side, just thinking about it. How did we just answer the question? Because we said over here that by Chulin, originally the understanding was that why is there a Kal v'chomer? Kal v'chomer means that one case needs to be stricter than the other. The stricter case would be kachim. Why is that stricter? Because mechashim me'aved l'aveda. But by chulin, it's less strict because ein mechashim me'aved l'aveda. That's a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan because Rabbi Yochanan says by chulin mechashim me'aved l'aveda. So we said no. The strictness of the kachim is not mechashim me'aved l'aveda. The strictness of kachim is that you have 4 opportunities to have forbidden thought. The leniency by chulin is that there's only 2. We would say by both. And as we answered, the premise of the question just went away, and now we have a new understanding of the Kal v'chomer. Okay, we're 3 lines from the top on the Lametes Amud Beis. Tani Kavaseder Rabbi Yochanan. Of a brisa, it supports Rabbi Yochanan. Someone shechts an animal. And by the shechita, he has intention that he's going to sprinkle the blood for an idol. So over there, we already have the raya for Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, even by chutz. Okay. Let's say he shechted it. And then he has thoughts afterwards. It says, this was a story that took place in Kisri, which is Caesarea. And they didn't know what to do. They didn't say Isser, they didn't say Heter, they left it in limbo. Says, the reason why they didn't say any Isser was because of the honor of the sages. Now, what did the sages say? The sages said that Stam Machshavas Avedis Kechavim is not for Avodah Zarah. That's the first way of understanding, going back to our Mishnah. So that even if there was a non-Jew there, but we don't assume that if the non-Jews know, we don't assume that he was thinking about an idol. Here we have someone that actually does think about idols. He's a Yisrael, but he's a mumar for Avodah Zarah. We know that he has intention that he's going to sprinkle the blood for an idol. We don't know what he had intention by the shechita though. So the Rabbanan would say that just like by a guy that does worship idols, but we don't say that he's always thinking about idols. So to by this yid that's thinking about idols, right? But we don't say that by the shechita he was thinking about that he's going to do the shechita for the sake of the idol. He thought by the shechita he's going to do the zrika. So we never extend the thoughts of Avodah Zarah at all. That's why they didn't say that it's aser, because according to the Rabbanan, this would be mutter. La yeheter. They didn't say that it's permissible because Mishum Kvaydid Rabbi Lezer. Because of what Rabbi Lezer says. What did Rabbi Lezer say? Rabbi Lezer says in the Mishnah that we do say Stam Machshavas Avedis Kechavim is. So here is for Avodah Zarah. So here we know that he is thinking about Avodah Zarah. So we would say by the shechita is also thinking about the Avodah Zarah. The Gemara says, "Mimai." How do you know that that's the pshat in the story in Kisri? It says, "Dilma ad kan lekamar Rabbanan hasem el leishmana dechashav deshman dechashav yichas el tchilasei." How can you do a comparison? Over there, we were saying that by the Tanakama, by the Rabbanan, we said that we don't say that the guy is always thinking about Avodah Zarah because we didn't know that he thinks about Avodah Zarah. But here, when you know that he's thinking about Avodah Zarah, 2 seconds later, he's thinking about it. So then we would say that you see that that's what he's thinking. So maybe the Tanakama over here would say that it's aser. Inami, or another possibility is Atkan like Rabbi Lazar Asam al Gabe Evid Kacham the Stamach Shavas Avidcham Lavid's Kachavim. Over there, we're dealing with a guy, and the guy is going to be thinking about idolatry. So therefore, Rabbi Lazar says that he's thinking about idolatry. It's interesting over here. It says Mishum Kvedi the Rabbi Lazar, the Rabbi Eliezer, but the Rashash I have on the side to change it to Rabbi Lazar. So I don't know why if they didn't go back to the Mishnah to switch it. Well, I know why they didn't do it in the Mishnah, because the Mishnah says Reish Aleph, it has abbreviation. So everywhere in the Gemara, besides for one other place on the top of Lamed Tesam and Aleph, it says Reish Aleph. It's the first time. Well, over there it says Rebbe Lezer. It should have been corrected up there. Whatever the case is, when does Rebbe Lezer say that there's a problem that's by a guy? Because we say that a guy is thinking about a default thought of a guy is for Avodah Zarah. But over here, Avodah Yisrael, we don't say that just because later on we see he thinks about Avodah Zarah, he's a mumar for Avodah Zarah, so therefore before he was also thinking like that as well. We don't say that. Mamish like Avodah Yisrael. So even though we know that this guy goes to a church, but before he walks in, we don't say we think that we think that he went crazy just at the moment he stepped in. Beforehand, we think he's normal. Okay. Ella, so now we don't have a pshat in the why Leila Yisrael Leila Heter. Rav Shizvi explains La Yamru Beheter Mishum Kvedi Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. They didn't say that it was mutter because of the honor of Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. So we didn't discuss Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. Hey, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, which opinion of Rab Shimon ben Gamliel are you talking about? Ilim Rab Shimon ben Gamliel the Gittin. Do you want to say that it's Rab Shimon ben Gamliel of Gittin? Where over here we're going to say as we'll see in a moment. It says Ditanan. We have a Mishnah. Bari Shamer Kisva get Lishti. If there's a healthy person, doesn't seem like he has shalom bias, but he's a healthy person. In other words, he's not crazy, or he's not dying on his deathbed. Shamer Kisva get Lishti. He says, write a get for my wife. He didn't say to give it. You know that when it comes to a get, you have to have instructions to write it, and you also need instructions to give it. You can't just give it. Maybe the person wants to have it just in case, and he doesn't really want to divorce her. Someone finds a get and says, "Oh, your husband obviously wanted to give this to you, so I found it. So here it is." So she's not divorced because the husband didn't send him to do it. Mamash need to make a shliach to give it. Person can't just just give it without being sent, without being okay. So someone says, write a get for my wife. But we say he's playing with her. He didn't really want to give it. It's not a valid get unless he adds in the words utenu and give it. There was a story with a healthy person. Shama Kisva get lishti. Said, write a get for my wife. And he goes up to the roof, he falls off the roof and he dies. Now, the story here is that someone had taken the get and given it to the wife. The person that was instructed to write it took the get and gave it to the wife. Now, there was no instructions to give it to the wife. So the question is this a valid get or not? So now the guy is dead. What should matter? She can marry anyone anyway, right? Well, no, because it could be that her husband had a brother, and before she can marry someone else, she would have to do yibam. But the brother, let's say, is a child, and she has to wait 13 years to do Yibam. So what are we going to do now? We're going to say that she's divorced. So she could, but 1 second. But he didn't say that you should give the get. Someone gave the get, the guy gave the get, but that wasn't part of the instructions. It could be the whole get isn't valid. So, Amar Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, we have to look at how the guy fell off the roof. If he fell off the roof on his own, that means intentionally, then Hari's a get. If he committed suicide, we say it's a get. So why did he tell his wife? Why did he say to give a get to his wife? Because he wanted to protect her. He was going to commit suicide. He wanted to protect her from Yibam, that she should be free to marry. If he went up the roof, I don't know, smoked a cigarette or get some fresh air, and then the strong gust of wind came and pushed him off, ain't a get. It's not a good get. Because He only said kisvu. He only said to write it, didn't say to give it. Okay, now, Vahavinan Ba, we asked on this Mishnah that we quoted, said, Maisa Lista, you're quoting a story that has nothing to do with the first halacha. First halacha was that the get is not a good get. He only says kisvu. You tell me a story where the get is possibly a good get. What does that have to do with the it says, no, we're missing something. Is a get. Which means that we have a Mishnah over here where Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, that the end teaches us something about what his intention was originally. So we'll say the same thing by the person that has thoughts by a shchita to do a zrika for avodah zarah. We'll say that seifa yechiach al tchilasai. We'll say that because at the end that's where his thoughts. So we'll say that that's what his thoughts were at the beginning as well. When it says v'dilmashani hasan dam kisvu, how can you do a comparison? Over here he actually said to write a get. So maybe over here yechiach seifa al tchilasai. Over there at the beginning we don't know anything at the beginning. Ela Maravina Mishum Kveda Reb Shimon Gamliel Dahacha. Rather, Ravina says it's a different. It's the honor of Reb Shimon Gamliel from a different case. It's the case of Reb Shimon Gamliel of the Tanya. Was taught in a brisa. Hakayis if nechasav lacherim. If someone writes a document that he's giving over all his possessions to someone else. When that person receives the document, he's going to acquire all his possessions. And amongst those possessions were also slaves. Amar, the person that's acquiring it, he says, I don't want to know any more slaves. So Im haya rabbi sheni kayen. If the person that's the recipient of this gift is a kayen, so then harei elo oichlam b'truma. He acquired them anyway. And you know the halacha is that an Eved Kanani is allowed to eat truma. He was a kayen, so now the new owner is a kayen, they can eat truma. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, Kivan shamar Allah, yefshi behem, kvar zachu behem ayarshim. Once he says that I don't want them, so they immediately go back to the original owner. The original owner, let's say, passed away. And so it's going to go to his inheritors. So they have it. And the inheritors are Yisraelim, so they can't eat Truma. We asked the question on this. The guy says, I don't want them. Why are we saying that he acquires them? You don't acquire something against your will. We know on Pesach, sometimes you get things in the mail. You say, I don't want it. I don't want it. I'm only kind of what I, right? So, I'm a Rabba. Rabba says, Itema Rabbi Yochanan, Tzeveach mi'ikara, the kuli amalei pligi d'leikana. If he's screaming the whole time, I don't want the avadim. So then everyone agrees he's not kind of. Sheisek, Seif Tzeveach, if at the beginning he's quiet, and then later on he says, Ayve, I don't want these. It's too late. You already acquired them. The kuli amalei pligi d'kana. Ki pligi, where was the machlekes? Zikalai al yadeyacher, where he acquires it through someone else. In other words, someone else takes the document for him, and it's considered as chus. Zachem adam shlei b'fanav. So the person was watching, b'shasak, and he was quiet. Al b'seif tzavach, and then he screams. Tanakam asaver midashasik kaninu. The Tanakam holds the fact that you were watching when the person acquired it on your behalf means that and you were quiet. That means you acquired the slaves. And this that you were screaming was because you just changed your mind. So it's too late. They already acquired them. They're going to eat truma. No, since you screamed later, that's proving that the reason why you were quiet at the beginning, why didn't you scream at the beginning if you really don't want it? So why should I scream if I didn't get it yet? It didn't come into my hand yet. But because later on we see that you're screaming, so that tells me also that the person that had intention for Avodah Zarah, later on, we say that the Shechita was also probably for Avodah Zarah because the end proves what his thoughts were originally. Amar Reb Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Yosi, the halacha is like Rabbi Yosi, back in our Mishnah, yeah? That an owner doesn't affect the validity of a shechita, only the sheikha. It says, Hanu tayu, the asul l'tzikinu. There were these tayi are Arab merchants. They came to a place called Tzikunya. They came to Tzikunya. Yoav dichel l'tabchi Yisrael. So these Arabs gave rams, that's male sheep, to the Jewish butchers. Amalahu, they said to the sheikhtim, Dama v'tarba lididan, umishcha bisra lididchu. Says we want to keep the blood and the fat, and you can keep the skin and the flesh. Now, what are they doing? Now, today we would say that the Muslims don't worship idols. But these were like it was before what's it called? Before Muhammad, where they didn't just worship one God, they worshiped many gods. So Shalcha Reb Tuva bar Masna l'kamid Reb Yosef. They asked Reb Tuva bar Masna asked Reb Yosef, what's going to be the halacha with this meat? Ki agavna mai, what's going to be the din? Shalach lei. So Rabbi Yosef responded, we don't care about what the owners think about. It's what the sheikhim think about. It's going to be kosher. According to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, that Rabbi Eliezer held that the thoughts of the owner are going to can invalidate an animal because could be the owner's thinking about Avodah Zarah. Let's say he paid. Let's say, I guess the Jewish person is shechting an animal, and a guy comes around and says, "I want a piece of it," and here's a coin. So now, according to Rebbe Lezer, he says that the owner, this guy is now just became a partial owner. So, what's going to be the halacha? Do we say that he's going to invalidate this whole animal? He's a shutif. Amalei, so Ravashi, who is this? Said to Ravashi. Ravashi says, Chazina, we have to take a look. Ianish Alma, who the matzi madchile, if he's a strong person where you can't push him away by giving him back the money, so then then the person acquired it, and the animal would be prohibited. Bilai, but if he's not a strong person, he can just say, take your money back. Amalei, Reshech Vahar. You can give him back his money and tell him, here's your head and here's a mountain. It's like a klap cup and vant. That's the go bang your head against the mountain. I don't need your money, and I don't want you to invalidate the animal. So that he can only say if if the person that gave him the money wouldn't be a strong person that could force him to keep the money. Okay, leave it over here. We're up to the Mishnah and bottom of Lamites. Have a good day, everyone.